So hello and welcome back to all of you from around the world to the IT Leader Growth Summit. In this session, we are going to discuss the topic, attack the triple threat to IT success to achieve more. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Mike Sisco. Mike himself was an IT manager and CIO for over 20 years. He has managed IT organizations of all types, including startups, large distributed organizations, and even turnaround situations in multiple industries. In 2000, Mike created MDE Enterprises, Inc. to help IT managers of the world achieve more success. MDE provides one of the first certifications for IT managers in the industry. And Mike has, in the meantime, published 15 books and written over 800 articles on IT management. His IT Manager Institute is available in classroom and self-study format, so any IT manager has the opportunity to develop key management skills and achieve more success. Mike, I've been following you for quite a while now already online, and I'm really intrigued by what you're writing. So I'm absolutely thrilled that you've agreed to show our audience today a bit more. All over to you to give us an introduction.
Okay, thank you, Matthias. I really appreciate you having me participate in your summit, and I hope it goes really well for you. Like you said, I've been managing IT organizations for a long time, and one of the key things that I really like out of that is developing other IT managers and helping people achieve more success, which is part of my mission statement. The topic I chose today is triple threat to IT success. I thought it might be helpful to be aware of the three key things that cause IT failure and what you can do to prevent those things, because if you can, it can make you much more successful. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go through a short presentation. All right, well, welcome to the triple threat to IT success. I created this phrase probably around 1999, 2000. Trademarked it, and there's three key reasons why IT organizations fail. There's some big challenges in IT, as we know. IT managers, you may not know this, but IT managers have the most difficult management role in a company. And I wrote a blog post. I have a blog on CIO.com called Practical Management Tips for IT Leaders. I wrote a blog post a while back titled 7 Reasons IT Managers Have the Most Difficult Management Role in a Company. And we really do. So let me go through those 7 reasons because it sort of sets the stage to the triple threat. The first is there's rapid change in technology. Now, if you look at other departments like accounting, sales, their techniques and their processes and so forth, they're not changing very much. But in the IT world, it's changing daily. So I read an article, I don't know how many years ago, it was probably 10 or 15 years ago, and it said in the last 10 years, technology has changed more than in the entire history of the human race. That's pretty daunting fact. Well, technology is only changing faster, as we all know. So this rapid change creates a lot of challenge for IT managers. The second reason is that it's a hard transition from technical expert to IT manager. Most of us come out of the technology ranks and we're very good at what we do in the technical side. But moving to management, that's a whole different skill set. And a lot of IT managers that get into that job initially, unfortunately, struggle and aren't very successful. So it's a very hard transition from technical expert to IT manager. It was very difficult for me, and I see and hear about it all the time. Third reason is that delegating and depending upon others is a new and tough challenge. If you think about it as a technical expert, your success is based upon pretty much what you do. All of a sudden you move into the management ranks and your success is not dependent upon what you do, it's dependent upon what your team gets accomplished. That's a whole different dynamic that is very difficult for a lot of people to adapt to. I can tell you it was a challenging issue for me because it's hard to let go when you're high detail, like most of us are, over 95% of us in IT are high detail. When you're high detail, it's very difficult to let go of that detail. Fourth reason, IT employees are harder to manage. Think about this for a second. If I'm in the accounting department and I'm the CFO, I probably know as much about that accounting system and our chart of accounts and the reports that are coming out of those systems as anybody on my team. I'm probably the knowledge expert on that team. Well, in the IT world, if I'm managing a group of infrastructure people and I come from the business application side, I'm not the knowledge expert. My employees know a lot more about the technology than I, as their manager, know about that technology. And as you get into bigger and bigger organizations, that's going to become more and more true. Well, that makes IT employees are a bit more difficult to manage than when you're the expert. Reason number 5 is there's no one around to help a struggling IT manager. You see this guy here, he's kind of standing there all by himself. Well, that's the fact when you look at a company, especially in a small or mid-sized company. There's really no one around who can help you because they don't understand IT. In fact, in a lot of cases, they don't understand what you're talking about half the time, especially if you're talking about using technical terms and those kinds of things. Trait number 6, IT must understand the needs and issues of all departments in the company. Now, there's no other organization in your company that has to do that. If I'm the accounting manager, I need to understand my needs and issues of my accounting department. If I'm in the marketing department, I need to understand the needs and issues of my marketing department. In IT, not only do we need to understand the needs and issues of our IT department, but we also need to understand those needs and issues of the billing department, the accounting department, the HR department, the operations organizations, and so forth. And the reason we have to do that is because a lot of their objectives and the things that they're trying to do are dependent upon technology. And if we don't understand those needs and issues, we won't be positioned to be able to support those issues. Here's a perfect example. As a CIO, I've been involved in 45 company acquisitions. And when I do the IT assessment or due diligence in those acquisitions, I go through all the boxes of material that I ask for IT, but I also have to go through the material to understand the payroll department, the billing department, the accounting department. I have to go through their boxes as well to determine if there are issues or needs in there that have IT support implications. So IT is the only department that has to understand the needs and issues of all the other departments in the company. It places a much bigger challenge on IT managers. Number 7, communication challenges. We all know that IT managers struggle in communication. The one thing that comes out in surveys year after year when they survey the clients of our IT support, and the clients are senior managers of the company and department managers and their users, the one thing that comes out all the time is that IT does not communicate very well. In fact, you see this image, I kind of use this to look like a black hole. I've even heard clients tell me when I go in to do an IT assessment as a consultant, I've heard the IT support clients tell me when you're working with IT, it's like dropping something in a black hole. You never hear back from them. Okay, not good. All right, so there are 7 key challenges that cause IT managers to have the toughest management role. Now, the good news is IT has tremendous leverage, and we really do have tremendous leverage. IT can positively impact every business department by either helping them reduce their cost or helping improve the productivity of their employees. No other department in your company has this kind of leverage. Now, the challenge is senior managers of companies, especially in small, mid-sized companies, they don't always know this. So it's up to the IT manager to make sure that the departments understand the leverage possibilities that we have in IT to reduce costs and improve productivity of their organizations. All right, I've worked with companies that's allowed me to work with and observe hundreds of IT managers, far more than most IT managers or CIOs get the opportunity to. And basically it's because of the nature of our companies. My customers, in essence, were outside companies, and they all had IT organizations. IBM was one of those companies. All right. From all of that, I've come away with some observations, or from those observations, I've come away with some conclusions. And those conclusions are, there are three key reasons why IT organizations fail. I call that the triple threat to IT success. The triple threat is three things. IT business disconnect. What that means is IT is out of sync with what the business needs. Project failure, not delivering projects successfully. And poor communication, not communicating very effectively. So there are three key reasons why an IT organization will fail, and here they are: IT business disconnect, project failure, and poor communication. We've got to attack all three of these to make sure they don't exist in our organization. All right, let's take a look at each one of them. Threat number one is the IT business disconnect. What is an IT business disconnect? Well, it's when IT's working on the wrong priorities. The business needs you to be working on A, B, and C, but IT's working on X, Y, and Z. I've done a lot of IT assessments in my career, and I can tell you that it's very obvious when a seasoned CIO or a seasoned consultant goes into a company. It's pretty obvious pretty quick if IT is in sync or not in sync. If you're not in sync, it's creating a gap between the business and IT. And the problem is senior managers of the company and the senior IT manager, whether that's called an IT director or a CIO, these groups, they're not really aware they're out of sync. They know something's not right, but they can't put their finger on it, especially the senior management, say the CEO and CFO. They feel like something's not quite right, but they can't put their finger on the issue. Well, here's a question for you. How long does it take to learn if IT is out of sync with the business? Well, you might be surprised, but it only takes 1 to 2 hours. When you go in to do an IT assessment, the group that you want to meet with first is the CEO and CFO. And let me give you some examples of some of the things that they might say. We don't know what IT is working on. We spend lots of money on technology, but not always sure why we're spending that money. And we're not sure IT is responsive as they should be. Well, here's the thing that I know for certain. If I hear one of these first two statements, we don't know what IT is working on, or we're spending money and we're not sure why, IT is absolutely out of sync with that business. Because if they're in sync, the senior management team knows what IT is working on, and they know what you're spending money on and why you're spending money on those things or those projects. All right, so it only takes 1 to 2 hours to determine if an organization is either in sync with their company or if the IT organization is out of sync. You want to avoid this IT business disconnect at all costs. Now, this happens far more in small, mid-sized companies than it does in very large companies, as you might expect. Well, the process to avoid this disconnect is real simple. You conduct an IT assessment, you develop a business-driven IT strategy that's addressing the business needs and issues that you uncovered in your assessment, and you sit down and you review and gain approval with the senior management team. If you do these three things, you absolutely will be in sync with your company. I have a 5-day IT Manager Institute program. The first things that we talk about is conducting an IT assessment and developing an IT strategy so that we attack this IT business disconnect right off the bat. All right, threat number 2 is project failure. There are high levels of project failure. Those are reported. If you're looking for it, you can find articles about this every year. It's been happening for a long time. It continues to happen. IT has a history of not delivering projects very successfully. And it destroys your IT credibility, because basically, if you're not delivering your project successfully, what this is saying is that you can't do what you say you will do. Not good. So The key to IT credibility is delivering projects successfully. That's important to know. All right, well, to deliver projects successfully, that means you've got to deliver them on time, within budget, meet the client's needs, and achieve the results that you expected with those projects. The big culprits to project management are scope definition and communication. I've seen company after company, when I go in and do an IT assessment, number one is they're not running projects very well. And they're even going after a project and trying to do something when they haven't even defined the scope of what has to be delivered. Well, there's no way you can be successful if you haven't defined and gotten agreement with your customer on what the deliverables are going to be. You absolutely have to quantify that and be very, very specific. Scope definition is a big issue. The reason that doesn't happen is IT managers have a high sense of urgency and they want to go do the work. We love doing the work, but we don't like that communication piece. So this communication piece gets in the way as well on the project management side. It's extremely important for you to incorporate a project management methodology. There are dozens of them out there. PMI, Prince 2, dozens of them. Pick one. It doesn't matter which one you pick. They all work, but you need to pick one and use one. You need to use simple tools, and you need to start managing projects like projects so that you can deliver projects successfully. Projects happen because project managers make them happen. Projects don't get delivered successfully on their own. They get delivered successfully because effective project managers make them happen. All right, one of the things you want to do is you want to track and communicate your project success or the results. So I'm going to give you a free download at the end of this class or this program. And one of the tools that I'm going to give you is this IT initiatives portfolio. You define the IT initiative, who's responsible, that's usually the project manager, the time frame, and what you're going to see is a column that says on time. What you want to see is lots of yeses. That yes, we were on time in delivering this project. You have a section called budget, budgeted cost, actual cost, and the variance, and you've got a column called within budget. You want to see lots of yeses in that column. And the results. Now, I don't track results on every project, but if I've got a big project and I've got something that's supposed to deliver some pretty large tangible results, I'll track those, and I like to track them in 6-month results and 12-month results if it's a very large project. So you've got a section to track that. You got a section called meets user needs. You want to see lots of yeses in that column as well. The project sponsor is the person who determines whether or not the project met their needs. And then you have an overall rating, success or not successful. You want to see lots of successes there. And the nice thing about this tool is I've got a summary down at the bottom where I can calculate the percentage of time that I've delivered my projects on time, the percentage of time I delivered my projects within budget, a total of the results, meeting the user needs, and a percentage of time the success, we achieve success with our projects. Can be very, very helpful. I've used this tool for a long time. I don't remember when I created it, but I've used it for a long time. It's probably one of the tools that's helped me as much as anything, because on just a page or two, I can communicate an awful lot of information to my senior management team and my clients. Threat number 3 is poor communication. IT managers have a heavy reputation for being poor communicators, as I said earlier. And part of that is over 70% of us are shy and introverted. I've used some work behavior tools for well over 15 years. I've gotten very familiar with that. And one of the things that it shows me time after time is that over 70% of us in IT are shy and introverted. That's everybody in your IT organization. Doesn't matter if you're a manager, a desktop technician, help desk, what have you. And if you're shy and introverted, just like I am, and a lot of people listening to this class, you have a lower desire to communicate. Extroverts want to communicate. Shy and introverted people, that drains our energy. That's not real high on our list. We'd rather be doing work working on spreadsheets, working on projects, things like that. Getting something done, you might say. All right. Well, because of those things, we tend to lack good communication skills as IT managers. We probably have not invested in these communication skills ourselves. Unless you're fortunate like I was, my first real job was with IBM, and in IBM, they pushed you through a lot of communication development because they understand the need for communicating effectively. So you got to address this issue. You want to develop your communication skills. You want to invest in yourself and your staff's communication skills, what to communicate, how to communicate, who to communicate to. And key communication skills that you need are presenting, holding meetings, listening, writing, negotiating, anything that you're communicating with. The thing you need to know as an IT manager is that effective communication skills can do an awful lot to help improve your career or advance your career. IT managers who get things done and who communicate well are rare. And if you communicate well, it can do an awful lot to help you in your career. You need to implement processes that literally force you to communicate, because you need to remember that if you're shy and introverted, you have a lower desire to communicate. So one of the things that I do when I go into a new company is I establish some schedules of meetings that's going to force me to communicate, and force me to communicate with my clients, my staff, and project management status meetings and things like that. Literally, don't take the chance that you'll just get to it, because things come up every day. You won't get to it unless it's on the schedule. If it's on the schedule, it's going to force you to prepare for that meeting. It's going to force you to communicate in that meeting. All right, effective communication leads to success, big time. All right, another tool that I'm going to give you in this download at the end is prevention tips. It's a one-page deal that'll tell you or give you some guidelines on how to attack these three threats: the IT business disconnect, the project failure, and poor communication. All right, let's summarize the triple threat to IT success. There's a triple threat. It plagues many IT organizations, especially small, mid-sized companies. IT is out of sync, IT is not delivering projects successfully, and IT is not communicating effectively. Overcome these three problems and you'll be very, very successful in your IT organization. Stronger communication is the key. The culprit or thing that causes the IT business disconnect and project failure tends to be poor communication. So you want to attack poor communication first and foremost. All right, I want to thank you. The download I mentioned, go to mde.net/triple.zip, and you'll be able to get these two tools. This IT initiatives portfolio, there'll be some instructions in this particular tool, and this triple threat to IT success prevention tips. Also, if you're interested in more IT manager resources with what we do, take a look at my website, itmanagerinstitute.com. And while you're there, click on the free ebook. When you join my free newsletter, I do a newsletter every month. You'll get a free copy of my book, IT Management 101, that can be pretty helpful, I think, in giving you a foundation for IT management. We think that we've given away easily over 700,000 copies of this item when people join up for my newsletter and other organizations' newsletter. All right, I want to thank you again and wish you the best of success. And I'm going to turn it back. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Matthias, and I'm going to turn it back to you in case you have some questions.
Right. Thanks very much, Mike. Yes, I definitely have a few questions, but first of all, very well done. It was I can definitely find a lot of my clients and my experience in what you've been saying in those 7 points and so on. And also the 3 points that you're bringing out, the triple problem there. And you highlighted it a bit, but which one of the three would you say is the biggest one. You highlighted communications at the end. Is that really the underlying problem, or how do you see that?
Yeah, I really believe communication is the big problem overall, because poor communication causes the IT business disconnect, because you're not communicating with your senior management team and delivering them a strategy that they can review and agree upon. It also causes project failure. We like to start doing we'd like to start doing projects before we've defined the scope and before we've got agreement with the project sponsors and so forth. So communication is definitely the big one. And the reason communication is such a problem is it comes back to our personalities. Our personalities we're independent, self-starters, we're shy and introverted, over 70% of us, and we're high detail, very high detail. Now that's a good thing, being high detail, but the communication piece, being shy and introverted, you have to overcome that when you move into the IT manager ranks. When I'm a technical expert, when I'm programming, or I'm a systems engineer working on my systems and configuring systems and those kinds of things, I don't have to communicate too much outside my inner circle. And my inner circle is usually other employees in the IT organization. But when I move over and become an IT manager, I have to communicate with a lot of groups. I have to communicate with customers, maybe vendors, and IT employees and so forth. So I have to boost my communication skills. And a lot of IT managers don't really see that, because that's not a big priority in their life. I can tell you, I don't jump out of bed in the morning and go racing to the office to go communicate with a lot of my customers. That's not what gets me excited. But as an IT manager, or especially a CIO, I have to be able to do that. So one of the things that I do is I go through a change in my personality. When I go into the office, I become much more extroverted and much more personable and communicate a lot more, because I know I have to do that to be effective. Now, it drains a lot of my energy. When I get finished at the end of the day and I go home, I eat my dinner, I sit down, if the TV's on 10, 15 minutes, I'm asleep, because I'm wiped out, because I'm being somebody that I'm not, that's not really my inner makeup of my personality. But if you recognize those things, the good news is you can adapt and you can make changes, just like I do. I'm introverted and shy, but if you were to see me as a CIO, you'd never realize that, because I'm much more outgoing and personable, because I know I have to do that to be effective in the job. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. There would absolutely then be the question, and that's the next one of that is, yes, you need to do that if you want to become an IT manager or a CIO. Is that something that you say everybody should learn, or is there more of a, you can also be a technical specialist? What's the future there versus the IT manager? Because you're saying you're being quite drained at the end of the day, but you still chose this career, and it's a fulfilled career. I can imagine. How do you put these two together?
Well, I love the IT management job. I love being a CIO, okay? And the things that helped me work on technology when I was a technical expert, those traits are good for that job, but they're not necessarily helpful as an IT manager. So I have to adapt and develop the skills that's going to make me successful in the new job. My first IBM manager gave me some really good advice one time. The advice he gave me when I left his organization, I was a systems engineer, a technical guy, and I moved into marketing. When I got ready to move into marketing and go work for another manager, Brian told me, he said, Mike, when you go into marketing, you need to focus on what it takes to be successful as a marketing rep and not an SE. The fact that you have a technical background and insight is going to help you in that job, but you've got to focus on marketing, and those are new skills. Well, same thing. If I'm a programmer and I get promoted as the programming manager or the system development manager, I've got to develop new skills, because communication is a skill that's critical. It's not something that's nice to have. It's absolutely critical if you're going to be effective in that job. So if you don't have those skills, you got to develop those. Now, the good thing is those skills are very easily to develop if you go focus on it. A big part of communication is knowing what to communicate and how to communicate. It's not a big deal. And the more you do, the easier that it gets. Okay, one of the things that I tell every class, if I were in their shoes, sitting in that classroom, my IT Manager Institute, when I leave that class, the one thing that I would make sure that I focus on is to develop my communication skills, because your communication skills can help leverage your career as much or more than anything. Now, you still have to deliver the goods. You still got to get the business, get the projects done and those kind of things. But if you can communicate effectively, that's going to give you a big edge over other people that are trying to vie for those senior positions. So yeah, okay. Communication is key.
Yeah, I like that. When we prepared, you said there are 4 traits that you find in an IT manager normally, or which are measured, and where IT managers fit into quite a mold. And some of them are really beneficial, and some of them are, like we said, one of them was the introvert versus extrovert, where the introvert is not really beneficial, and you have to work on that. Can you maybe look at the other 3 a bit and just say, what are those and what should I look at?
Yeah, if you look at personality tools or work behavior tools, they all tend to measure things in 4 areas, whether it's Myers-Briggs, Personalysis, Predictive Index, whatever tool you're looking at, they tend to measure things in 4 areas. Well, the 4 areas for IT managers and IT employees were all the same. The 4 things are: we're independent self-starters, we have a high sense of urgency, we're high detail, and we tend to not want to communicate. So our profile says we take this approach. Let's go do the job, do it right now, do it my way, and I don't want to talk about it. Well, I don't want to talk about it might work as a programmer or a software developer, but it's not going to work as an IT manager. Okay, you got to be able to talk about it. So the things that help me be successful as a technical expert don't necessarily help me be successful as an IT manager. For example, if you're extremely high detail, when you become an IT manager, you need to pull some of that detail back, because you can't be as detailed as you were and still focus on management issues. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to not be high detail. I'm high detail. I struggle with that all the time of preventing from being too detailed. You know, being high detail means that you're perfectionist oriented. Well, there's some things you don't need to be perfect on it. You just need to be able to be successful with it. And so you can overdo some things, whereas you could get a whole lot more done if you weren't so perfectionist oriented. I fight that all the time.
Yeah, I think with those ones and the communications and those traits, I think, yeah, I like that you're saying we need to really look at what's a benefit and what do we need to dial down a bit to become a manager. But now let's, if I step away from the poor communications again, is the other one you said is project failure. Luckily in this summit, we've got very, very many other topics that have come into the whole faster execution mode. You also brought up a few, and you said there's so many different areas like PMI, like Prince2, one that's being embraced all the more in medium business, as well as the whole lean agile conglomerate of ideas, and we've got a few sessions around that. But what I found interesting that you said, start with something. What do you mean? How do you say? Just take one of them and go, because they all work, but just do something.
Yeah, you've got to have a project management methodology. And you've got to create project schedules, and you've got to have status meetings, especially if it's a project of any size. Okay, 3 months, 6 months, a year. All right. If you don't, you might as well just go ahead and shoot yourself in the head, because you're not going to deliver that project successfully. Let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, I did an interim CIO engagement as a consultant to start managing an IT organization of a large security company in the western part of the United States. And when I got there, they had a big project going. And I got there, I think in, I don't know, middle of February, early March. And they had to deliver this project by May the 20th. And if they did not deliver it successfully, they were going to lose a substantial part of their business. Real revenue was going to go away if they didn't deliver this project successfully. Well, when I inspected it, they had no project schedule that they were managing to. They had no project manager on it. They're just doing the work. And the problem is, you can't just do the work and not have it structured and know what's getting done, what the issues are that are coming up, so forth. If you do that, there's no way. So I told the CEO, I said, there's no way this project's going to go in successfully. You better get a real project manager on this project quickly, because it's going to be in the ditch. It ain't going to go in successfully. Well, they did do that. And they got a project manager on there. She never set sight in that office. She did it all remotely, but she knows how to manage projects. She got a schedule in place. They still didn't even have a scope document to quantify what had to be delivered. Unbelievable, right? You think that's unbelievable. Well, this is a $700 million company, not an inconsequential company, reasonable size. But they still didn't even have the scope defined in terms of what they needed to do in that project. This project manager gets her arms around that, gets the schedule in place, starts having status meetings, and guess what happened on May the 20th? Everything went in live as expected, and the customer was very happy. The customer was not going to be happy if they hadn't gotten in control of that. So you've got people that are running along and working really, really hard on the IT side, but they're missing the boat if they're not using a project management methodology and tools to manage to those projects.
And I think that goes hand in hand, and you just now alluded to it with your whole IT business disconnect, because you need to understand what the business needs. Because it's too often that we are running projects, and I often come into companies where they're running 30 projects at the same time, but they've got no idea which one is actually important, and they've got no idea, they've got end dates, they've got schedules, they've got Gantt charts, the lot, but there's no clear understanding which one is important to the business.
Right. I did an interim CIO position for a big hospital a few years ago. And when I got there, they're doing lots of projects. They don't have any project managers, but they're doing lots of projects. They didn't know how many they had. When I did the inventory, it turned out they had 42 active projects going on, some small, some larger. All right. The only one that was getting accomplished effectively was one that they had an outside consultant leading that project, and she understood project management. They even had people getting ready to go to PMI boot camp to get their PMP. Well, the problem is they couldn't even take the exam, because you have to have a certain amount of experience in project management to be able to take that exam. So I said, time out. We need to do some foundation work here first before we start gravitating to that. All right. So what I find amazing is that when I go into a lot of companies, especially on the small, mid-size area, there's a lot of talk about projects, but there's not any real project management going on in those companies. It's a lot worse than you might think it is.
But one thing that you also said there earlier on, where you said that you had that lady came in from the outside, is something that you're alluding to. Is it is relatively easy to get a project manager in, because it is it's a very specific discipline, but it is also a discipline that can be applied to a lot of companies. So you don't need to know the company intrinsically to run a project. So it is relatively easy to engage somebody. Is that correct, what you're saying?
That's absolutely correct. This lady did not understand any of the intricacies and dynamics of the security business that this company had. Certainly did not understand the ERP system that they were using, okay? But she understood how to deliver, one, define the scope of a project, two, create the schedule of what needs to get done to achieve that scope, and then to manage to that project. So yeah, project managers are plentiful. It's not hard to find a good project manager. In fact, that's a very competitive space. In my business, developing IT managers, I don't find that to be all that competitive. There are other organizations that do things, but when you're talking about practical how to do things, I don't run into a lot of competition. If I was in the project management space, there's competition all over the place. Lots of methodologies, lots of tools, lots of training, lots of consultant project managers. Yeah,
one thing that I find interesting with that is traditionally and notoriously the mid-market IT leader has got often, or the mid-market in general has got a problem with consultants, in that they are wanting to do it in-house, and they are also being threatened by consultants. But what I'm hearing from you, that project management is one of those where you can really get an expert, but you can plug them in and plug them out again. And you can develop your own capability over time and maybe get somebody in-house over time, but you don't have to do that from day one.
Right, yeah. I mean, you can develop your own talent within, and I highly recommend that you do that as a company. But you can also outsource it to give you a quick hit to get your arms around whatever projects that you've got, or the key projects that you've got going on in your company. Very helpful. Let me step back to the IT business disconnect for just a second, if we have the time.
Absolutely.
The thing that you hear from IT organizations every time you go in and do an IT assessment, you hear the same thing every time. You hear them say, we're working hard, we're working on the right things. The client does not understand us nor appreciate us. And a lot of times you hear we don't have enough money. Well, I've followed a lot of CIOs in my career, 45 company acquisitions. I've followed CIOs in there, and I've joined a few companies as a CIO, and I've done some interim CIO jobs as a consultant in the last 18 years. I've never had a CEO tell me we don't have enough money. But the reason he doesn't tell me we don't have enough money is I give him a recommendation on what we need to work on that's in sync with what the business needs. It's business driven. It's not just buying some technology to do something that we think is what's needed. It's to address a real business issue. So you have to focus on business value. And when you look at business value, it's 5 real specific things: increase revenue, decrease costs, improve productivity, differentiate the business so you can sell more widgets or services, and improve client satisfaction so you can retain your clients. So there's a lot of things that you need to do as an IT manager that's communicating in business terms as opposed to technical terms, okay? And when you go in and do an IT assessment, we call it IT assessment, but in reality, what most of it is a business assessment. We're trying to understand a couple of things in an IT assessment. Trying to understand the business needs and issues, so we know what IT needs to focus on. And we also need to understand our IT capacity or capability and capacity. What can we do and how much we can do? Because what we got to do is we got to use that capability and capacity to address those needs and issues. In some cases, we may not have a capability that we need to address a real issue. So we got to figure out how to go do that. Well, we can develop or use someone inside and develop that capability, or we can outsource it. depending on what the issue is. But if it's a real need that's legitimate to the business, we got to find a way to address that issue or work with senior management to make that need go away. One or the other.
Great. Thanks very much also for bringing that up. And to all our All Access Pass subscribers, Mike has also agreed to make available a course or another video and a bonus video of 40 minutes going a lot more in detail into this, into the cost of your downtime, or generally the cost of or the talking to the business in business speak rather than in tech speak, and also some tools there.
Yeah, one of the things that I've given you that you can post on your website is it's roughly a 1 hour video that talks about calculate the cost of downtime. And what it's all about is to help you justify and get approval and funding for projects. Okay, so it goes into the dynamics of how to do that and gives you a tool where you can communicate things in financial terms and risk associated with downtime that can help you, especially in infrastructure projects, things like that. So you'll have the link on your site where they'll be able to download that or access it actually.
Yes, that is for the All Access Pass subscriber. They will have access to that tool then. And thanks very much for that, Mike, for that bonus because that is, I think, a lot of our IT managers, and we had that discussion. That's why it came about that you published it. That we're saying that is one of the big things. We were talking about communication, but it is communication in relation to the business IT gap, because we can relatively easily communicate to other technical people, but when it becomes talking business, it becomes a lot more of a problem.
Yeah, I'll tell you a short story. As a young manager, I was trying to get approval for an infrastructure project, and I was talking with my CEO, and my boss, the president of the company, were sitting in the room. So I'm telling him what we need, and I'm talking routers and switches. Well, I see this painful look on my CEO's face. Well, I'm quick on my feet, so I throw on more detail because I'm apparently not giving him enough detail. Wrong. His pain only got worse. Finally, he looked over to my boss and he said, Gene, get with Mike. Just let me know what we need to do. Very valuable lesson early in my career. Because if you're talking in technology, okay, they don't hear you, they close you off, and it's painful, and they basically fall asleep. So you have to learn to talk in business terms. So one of the things that's in this video, calculate the cost of downtime, talks about how to have discussions in those terms, because when you do that and when they see it and they understand what you're talking about, they find ways to give you the money to do those projects. It's amazing. When they don't understand you, it's real hard for them to give you money to do projects when they don't understand what it is. Okay, so that video will help you with that.
Great, thanks. I think that's an awesome resource for that. I think if I'm looking at the time flies when you're having fun, so we slowly but surely need to wrap up. But one thing that I'm always asking my interviewees is to say, if there was only one thing that our viewers are remembering from this session, what would you want it to be?
I think the key to success as IT managers is being aware of what it takes to be successful, being aware of things that are going to prevent you from being successful, and in investing in yourself to be able to overcome those things. The triple threat's one, maybe budgeting is another, maybe developing a strategy is another. There's a lot of things that we need to be able to do as IT managers to be successful. And I would just say you need to invest in yourself and your team to be able to address those issues. And the more that you're able to do that, I can assure you senior management is looking for people who can get things done and can communicate things to where they understand it. They're looking for people that they can give more responsibility to. So when you go through those things, you want to make sure that you're positioning yourself to be promotable. And there's a whole series of things that's another class, but there's a whole series of things that you need to do to prepare yourself and position yourself to be promotable material. But if you're getting things done and you're communicating well, they want to give you more responsibility, I can assure you.
Great, thanks. I think that sums it up quite nicely. So for any of our viewers who want to know more, head over to Mike's website, sign up there. There's newsletter, and he's got lots of tools and obviously lots of classes. So by all means. For me, the only thing that is left over for me is to thank Mike once more. I think our viewers will agree that we've got lots and lots of experience talking here. So thanks very much, Mike, for being available for this. And it's has been an absolute pleasure. And I have definitely, out of my 25 years of experience in this industry, I can only nod my head a lot. So thanks again.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate it, Matthias, and I enjoyed sitting in on this with you. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much there, and that concludes our session. So it's a very good morning, a very good day, and a very good night to all of you, wherever around the globe you're watching this from. Thank you and goodbye.